So when it comes to designing properties, let's say we're trying to make the ultimate 40-acre parcel. Maybe you got 20 acres, maybe you got 10 acres, maybe you got 120 acres. The concept is all going to be pretty similar here. We're going to try and take 3 pieces of this puzzle, and we're going to mesh them together to create the ultimate property. We obviously have to do it strategically. It has to be huntable. We got to think about northwest winds, southwest winds, those popular winds that we get. Because if we just randomly throw these things in the property and they're not usable, it's useless. So think about thermals, think about when you're going to be hunting thermals in the morning, certain stand locations. You really got to get in depth about this stuff. But nonetheless, there's 3 different aspects that I want to go over. And it's not the food cover water that we've talked about in the past. Obviously, a lot of people know that or know those topics, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth. We're going to take the next step in. What are the 3 pieces of the property? Like what do we want to create that property and turn it into? The number one thing that I like to see properties turned into is a savanna. Okay, about 70% of the property I want to see in a savanna. What is a savanna? Savanna is basically what happens when you get a select cut. There's obviously other timber stand improvement methods that we could use to achieve those goals, but a savanna, we would say within that 70% of the property, we got a select cut done. We took out 70% of those trees, and there's still some big trees obviously in the canopy, but where those trees were taken out, the sunlight can hit the forest floor. Now there's diversity, there's new regeneration. And there's also some bigger trees, that are going to create some more edge because they're not going to allow that sunlight to hit the forest floor. Pretty straightforward. I like to see a lot of the property in savanna, 70% about, give or take. Every property is a little bit different. If you can't meet that 70% goal, like I said, it's not the end of the world, but you want to get close. The second most important thing that I want to get into is food. Food is definitely an important aspect to when it comes to planning and building a property, basically. Creating some sort of daylight pattern. If you have food and you have bedding, you're going to have the deer. So I'd like to see 10% of that property, especially that first year, 10% of that property being a food source. It kind of seems like a lot depending on the size of the property, but I want to make sure that we have enough food so that we can gauge maybe what your doe numbers are like, what your herd pressure is like, kind of get a balance as to what your deer herd's doing, and then we can manipulate that, and maybe we got to take out more does, or maybe we can plant less food in future years. So all it really takes is just 10% figuring out to gauge everything, that first year or two. Maybe you got to add more food. Maybe you can take some more food away and add more savanna. So at the end of the day, 10% food, that's the main goal as far as food sources goes. The rest of the property is kind of transitionary. You almost don't want to create perfect habitat everywhere because you want to be able to get in and get out and hunt those areas. We'll call them the transition areas. About 20% of your property I would leave in this transition area. We want to be able to leave some of those be less desirable areas so that you can get in and out without bumping deer. If you can have those areas, then chances are you're going to educate a lot less deer. Maybe those are the areas where they're right on the fringe of bedding or food or anything like that. Those areas are just going to be easier to hunt. It's going to be easier to go in there and not have to worry about pushing deer around. So at the end of the day, I want to split my property up into 3 things. 1, savanna, about 70%. 2, food source, about 10%. And 3, transition areas. Leave those areas alone, 20% of your property. That's how you create the ultimate 40-acre, 80-acre, 20-acre hunting parcel.